Sometimes great stories not only hold up, but are enhanced by a second viewing. Now, I don't think added depth in a rewatch is a prerequisite for a story to be good, but the shows that stick with me the longest in the most impactful ways tend to do it. Because when a story is fantastic the first time around, but gets better every time you revisit it, it helps it have such a long staying power. I think it's a major part of what makes Frieren Beyond Journey's End such a special show. Its numerous layers of depth are the reason I keep coming back to talk about it, and this is demonstrated beautifully by its first 2 episodes. Welcome to a running series called Exploring Frieren. My name is Pei, and today we're talking about how the second time around, Frieren's a very different story. I was first introduced to Frieren through discussion on the internet surrounding its first episode. While people talked about things like how the premise was an interesting subversion of storytelling structure, or the general quality of the show, the thing I saw talked about the most was the emotional impact. Which is interesting because when I watched it, it didn't really hit. I was absolutely engaged and intrigued by the entire approach, but when the emotional climax of the episode hit, I wasn't really invested in the characters. I think I'm in a minority here, but the first episode isn't what sold me on the series. I actually stopped watching for a little bit before my roommate convinced me to continue. Having big emotional moments at the end of the first episode or at the beginning of a movie isn't unique to Frieren. It's actually popular with tons of effective examples. The beginning of Pixar's Up and Naughty Dog's The Last of Us are built around big crescendoing loss, something that contextualizes and sets the tone for the rest of the story. While the first episode of Frieren is similar, its approach is drastically different. Instead of selling this deep connection between characters that'll lead to a tragic loss, it does the inverse. She's cold and uninvested in her previous relationships. And while Frieren is full of compelling characters and relationships, at the start of the story, they're presented as very formulaic. But after you've seen this series and are invested in the characters and the relationships, the first episode hits in a completely different way. Today's video is brought to you by Skillshare. Recently, I've mentioned across a couple of videos that I've been putting a lot of conscious effort towards writing a fantasy book, so my partnership with Skillshare came at a perfect time. While for me it's writing, you might have something else you want to improve at. Skillshare offers classes on a range of different topics like drawing, animation, photography, music, writing, business, or even making YouTube videos. Skillshare's large catalog and variety of courses gives you options to find classes that work the best to help you. So often when using online resources to learn, it's hard to curate for your own skill level. Skillshare gives you that information front and center so you can find the right fit. Take Yeon Lee's class on writing character-driven stories, for example. It's fascinating, and it focuses on a more achievable goal for me, as a generally inexperienced writer, creating a 3 to 5 page short story using the information she teaches. And the reason I'm so excited to continue my collaboration with Skillshare is because I care a lot about learning and developing skills, and the right guidance when picking up a new hobby or pursuit can be the difference between it sticking or slipping out of your daily habits. If this is something that interests you, the first 500 people to use my link in the description or the QR code on screen will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Get started today. Now back to the video. So there are many different types of stories that are different in repeat viewings. The most obvious examples are ones that are built around twists. Things like The Sixth Sense, where everything is recontextualized when you find out a piece of information at the end. Those are cool and interesting, but not exactly what I'm talking about here. With Frieren, the first time you're watching it, a twist isn't purposely being withheld. It's actually kind of a different story the second time around. And to understand that, we should first look at death scenes. Characters dying in media is nothing new to stories. Deaths are often reserved for major emotional moments and beats in a story, often climaxes, like the finale. But sometimes they're used as inciting incidents, like in Frieren. But pretty consistently, for a character death to hit, there has to be some sort of investment and attachment. But that's the thing about Frieren Beyond Journey's End. The namesake of the show and point of view protagonist is detached. I think I'm a little bit of an outlier when I say that the pilot for Frieren, while great, didn't hit very hard emotionally for me. I think Frieren very deliberately built characters around cookie-cutter tropes, and they eventually subvert those in really interesting ways. But because that, it took me about 3 episodes to really start to be invested. But by the time I got to the end of the first season, I was in love with all these well-crafted, complex characters. So when I rewatched the show, those death scenes suddenly hit really hard. Because Frieren's a story that takes place after the hero's journey, which means this story's introduction could also function as another's finale. And the second time around, it did. And it hit way different. The first time I watched episode 1, the writing was really effective. A major theme in this story is how disconnected Frieren is due to her nature as an everlasting elf. It's actually the first video I ever made about Frieren, exploring the idea of what would it really be like to live forever. The story starts after the hero's journey. The characters briefly reminisce about their adventures. And while I'd argue they're all likable, I don't think there's a lot of time given to the audience to really get connected, especially with Frieren as the point of view protagonist. I actually think that's the point. The information we're given in the story is run through the lens of Frieren's kind of perspective of the world. Kind of like when a book is written in third-person limited omniscience, but you can tell just how much the main character's perspective influences the prose. So when Frieren goes on her own way and 40 years is represented in this beautiful little montage that lasts a bit over 40 seconds, we get a glimpse into what it might feel like to be Frieren, to have huge chunks of time pass in the blink of an eye. And she returns to go on one last little adventure with the hero's party, once again being expressed expertly through another montage. A small but beautiful glimpse into the previous journey that hints at just how charming some of these characters are. Like this scene with Hyder holding a branch next to him while they're hiding from the passing monster. It's a clip I like so much I consistently add it into almost every one of my videos. Frieren's leading them to a beautiful spot to watch a meteor shower that happens once every 40 years. The same one that they watch together after fighting the Demon King. And we get another standout shot that I include consistently in so many of my edits, where Himmel's eyes go wide as he watches. And then, we're at his funeral. And Frieren realizes just how much she's regretted spending her time. This is what writers call the inciting incident. But the second time you watch this episode, it's easy to find yourself looking from a completely different perspective. This story is all about Frieren recontextualizing her previous journey with a new one, showcasing all the lessons that she failed to notice the first time around. A really fitting theme given what I'm arguing today. Losing Himmel the second time hurts so bad, because the writing in the first season does such a good job of making you fall in love with his character. He's charming, vain, heroic, and flawed. A man seemingly obsessed with leaving a legacy, who loves doing small acts of heroism as much as the big ones. He's a beautifully deep and complex character that's explored really well throughout the first season. There's so much depth behind what at first seems so simple. Because in the initial viewing, the emotions the audience feel in the first episode come from a place of empathy, relating to Frieren's feeling like she just got hit by a truck, blindsided by an emotion she was unaware of. But the second time around, you're mourning alongside her, losing a character that across 28 episodes you learn to really love. That's part of what makes this experience of watching the second time around so peculiar. For me, it was also something I stumbled into, not realizing how much it would impact me. Because the most emotional moments that Frieren has throughout the entire first season happen in the first 2 episodes. Obviously with the loss of Himmel, but also Hyder. Throughout this video, I've been using the term death scenes, plural, but I've mostly focused on Himmel and the first episode. But holy shit, does losing Hyder feels so different the second time around. His story with Fern is really fantastic, and this becomes more and more abundantly clear throughout the series, with scenes like that monologue from episode 14 where he talks about how being an adult is pretending sometimes, acknowledging how out of control the world feels, and how important it is to support those who need it. He was a corrupt priest with nothing that seemed like it could stop him from drinking, including saving the world, except maybe an orphan. He's this fantastic character. Everything from his use as comedic relief to the serious moments, like when he explains his background and history with Himmel. Stories are often about character arcs, and Frieren's starts when she loses Himmel. She realizes that she has to change the way she's living. And in Hyder and Eisen's later interactions with her, you can see how much they notice. It'd be easy to assume that the primary reason Hyder pushed so much for Fern to go on an adventure with Frieren was to provide for just Fern. But I think he could see that it might serve both ways. This beautiful story told in such a short amount of time, with this melancholy, happy, sad tragedy where Frieren's trying to insist that Fern learn the lesson that she just did. It just showcases how much of this series in a second viewing changes. It really functions as this beautiful bookend to the first season, a fantastic start to this story, and a delicate ending to another. 2 episodes that feel completely new when you watch them again.